What made me fall in love with working at Amazon was that it wasn't much different than my time serving in the Army. There's a common goal, there's an opportunity to excel, and there's shared experiences that bring teams closer together. When these when these shared when these those shared stories of success and failure, when we tell them, it allows us to relate to each other and to be seen. Working here in Tulsa, in Cherokee Nation, I'm able to not only work with people that look like me, but also I'm able to share my story and hear their stories, bring us closer together and inspire each other. Being represented matters. To give us practical tips on building resumes and build a brand that tells your authentic story, please welcome Christopher Gentry, Marjorie Williams, and Luli Shalilu to the main stage.
Representation matters. Your story, your voice. My name is Christopher Gentry, he and him. I'm a diversity recruiting program manager at Amazon's Global Diversity Inclusion Organization. For today's session, we're about sharing insights into personal branding, the evolution of Amazon's hiring process, and how Amazon uses leadership principles to assess talent and tips for new candidates. For the first part of the session, I'll be going over Resume 101 best practices, as well as your personal brand, how to raise the bar and providing overall tips along the way. All right, so let's go over in regards to Resume 101, how to stand out. Let's talk about your authentic story. A resume is a brief, informative summary of your abilities in education and experiences. It should highlight your strongest assets and skills that's really going to make you that X factor from other candidates that are similar into applying to those types of positions along the way. Oftentimes, candidates will reach out to me and say, hey, Chris, do I need to submit a cover letter for this particular requisition? At Amazon, being our peculiar company, we do not accept cover letters. So just ensure that your resume is up to date and you're all set to go. Now, when we talk about tips for a bar-raising resume, I provided some top 10 tips along the way. You want to customize your resume to tell that story. You want to pay special attention to the job title that's used, the description, the duties, the responsibilities of the job requirements. You know, what keywords and phrases are going to be repeated throughout that job description. Make a list of those terms and put a check mark next to them, and really making sure that you're describing the skills that you have as well as the responsibilities that were held in the past. Describe your resume into clear sections, that you have education listed, that you have your professional work experience, and that you're showcasing your skills as well as personal interest. And then you want to describe your accomplishments, not necessarily your responsibilities. And so oftentimes when I look at a resume, I see various accomplishments, or I may see responsibilities. We really want to focus on those accomplishments in a data-driven way versus the key role and responsibility that you was able to execute and deliver on. And by taking that data-driven approach, right, you want to quantify those accomplishments. And so the next slide or two, we're going to go more in depth in regards to key examples of what I'm going to showcase you all in regards to quantifying those results. And then from there, you want to add key skills. What are some skills traits that you may have depending on the functional role? If you're interested in a business analyst role, one of the key skills is a data language tool. So maybe you want to showcase the SQL, the R, the Tableau to really highlight that on your resume. And then keep it concise. You know, ideally candidates will reach out to me and say, you know, should I submit a 2-pager resume? Should I submit a 1-pager resume? It's really going to be different on the type of candidate. If you're a university hire, we highly recommend a 1-pager. If it's an industry professional that has, you know, 10+ years of professional work experience, it's okay to have 2 pages to represent that. But really making sure that it's being concise and that it's visually appealing. Making sure that your font is consistent from the very beginning of the section all the way to the end of the section. Excuse me. And then you want to proofread and make edits and choose the right font along the way. And then your resume, you always want to update your resume regularly. And oftentimes regularly could be every 6 months or so. As new job descriptions are getting posted, there's going to be new roles and responsibilities based on the basic qualifications and the preferred qualifications. So it's really key to work backwards to really making sure that the job description that you're submitting to aligns well to your resume. So there's 3 different types of styles of resumes. There's the chronological order, there's the functional resume, and there's also the combination resume. There's no requirement at Amazon in regards to a particular style. Being a former recruiter at Amazon, I always see the most popular resume is that chronological resume format. And that's where you list your work experience in reverse chronological order, starting with the most recent position at the top. And then for the functional resume, it's really focusing on more of the relevant skills than the work history itself. And then that combination resume is a blend of chronological and functional resume types. You know, these resume formats allows you to emphasize both your work experience as well as the relevant skill set. Typically, education is going to be on the very top. If you're an experienced hire, education is going to be at the bottom and your professional experience is going to be at the top. And you'll notice that when you look at the education, if you're a university candidate, you really want to hone into those coursework skill sets. Maybe I'm applying for a financial analyst role, and I want to showcase the interviewer that I have taken several different types of coursework that's related to finance classes. So you want to showcase that and really showcase that these are transferable skills that I'm able to utilize my skill set to be a bar-raising candidate along the way. Now, when you're looking at the professional experiences in this particular session, you notice that we're taking a data-driven opportunity here. Execute X, Y, and Z number of sales weekly to generate X, Y, and Z number of revenue. You know, you want to achieve an increase of X, Y, and Z in order to receive implementation of this particular goal. And so here's just a prime example. Every single bullet point that you have, you want to take a data-driven approach by showcasing that action as well as the result from those key accomplishments based on that role and responsibility that you have done. And then the last section is really going over the skills and interest. You know, oftentimes if there's a job description, and I mentioned like the business analyst role as a prime example, if the requirement is saying data language tool, you know, be concise and detailed in the skills and interests and hone into that particular data language that you are well calibrated in. If the job description is asking for Microsoft Office Suite, and they really want you to become more intimate in Excel, well, dive deep in regards to the skills and interests of Excel. Is it pivot tables? Is it VLOOKUPs? Is it index matching, right? And so really telling that story in a customizable way by working backwards of the job description. Looking at the basic qualifications, looking at the preferred qualifications, pulling all those key action words and customize your resume to tell a story that you are that bar-raising candidate by leading with data, by showing the action as well as the results. So that's a high-level overview of just a quick resume 101. And then we want to go over about your brand. I wanted to highlight a particular quote because it really stuck to me here. And your brand is a gateway to your true work. You know you are here to do something, to create something, or others in some way. The question is, how can you set your life in your work that you can do it? The answer lies in your brand. You can create a compelling brand, you attract people you want, the promise of your brand, which you deliver. It's really going back to that root cause of your brand is just being your full authentic self. And how you be your full authentic self is by building your brand, by defining your professional goals. You know, you want to clarify your values, your interests, and your passion. You want to create that vision of what you want to become. This is actually the fun part. You know, you're able to figure out what you want. Don't be afraid to think big. You know, take 15 minutes and document your vision along the way. List those strengths, your talents, your skills, and support your brand. And create your own mission statement and to communicate your brand broadly. Right? You really want to make sure that you're sitting at the table. And if you're not sitting at the table, what are people actually saying about your professional brand? So here are some open-ended questions as you are doing some true self-reflection about defining your own personal brand. It's broken down by superpowers, values, purpose, and that X factor, what's really going to set you apart, making you that bar-raising candidate that you are. And so when you talk about your superpowers, what do you do better than anyone else? If you were to receive an award, what would it be for? When it comes to your values, what are your top 3 pet peeves? And then when it comes to your purpose, what is your biggest hope or dream? If you won the lottery and didn't need to work, how would you spend your actual time? And then here comes the X factor. What aspect of the world will be different if you had not been part of it? And so hopefully these open-ended questions are allowing you to craft your professional brand of how you can be your full authentic self coming into the interview process. And so I wanted to segue into this particular time of our session now to have a panel discussion with a couple of Amazonians here that's really going to do more of a deeper dive in regards to how we interview at Amazon, as well as how we showcase our 14 leadership principles and providing best practices along the way. Today I have with me Lily as well as Marjorie. Please feel free to provide your intros.
Hi, my name's Luli Chaluleo. I've been she, her. I've been with Amazon for 8 years, and currently my role is the I lead talent acquisition for worldwide operations.
Hello, everyone. My name is Marjorie Williams, also she, her. I joined Amazon just over 2 months ago now. I joined their business affairs team on the TV side, so I'm a senior business affairs executive for Prime Video. And in that capacity, I help negotiate a lot of the writer, director, and talent deals to help us create content for our Prime Video.
Awesome. Lily, you both are a talent acquisition leader and a bar raiser and have interviewed hundreds of candidates. This session is both about practical tips, but also we want to talk about the importance of representation. Based on your experience, what is the advice that you can provide to our applicants?
Yeah, I think I looked the other day, I'm just over 500, final interviews plus phone screen. So I think I've done a lot of interviewing in my day at Amazon, and I love it. It's really similar actually to the message that you're talking about, which is authenticity. And different times I've noticed this in one-on-one interviews, and even I've noticed it as, pipelines, of candidates that are coming through. And what I notice is when we don't give folks a chance to be authentic. And so an example that that I have is we hire a lot of veterans in operations. Veterans and transitioning veterans just do really well. It's just a really great candidate profile for us. And what we had noticed, was that veterans were kind of struggling as they were interviewing with us. And so I hopped in to a few different interviews as well, and it was as if they weren't connecting. And so I think the word for it is code switching. But because they were just so used to, speaking kind of the military acronyms and the jargon, they were coming to their civilian interviews for the first time, and they were just, having a hard time changing everything that they talked about to talk in civilian terms. And so we said, okay, what we need to do is actually ensure that when these folks who are transitioning from the military interviewing at Amazon, we just have veterans on their interview panels. And as soon as we did that, actually their interviews became more successful. And all we really did was allow folks the chance to be authentic and bring their whole self and just talk the way that they talk and tell the stories the way that they could. So I think that's a really good example of how that can show. So just bringing your whole self to the table in an interview is something that I think is really important.
Yeah, definitely. I would definitely want to +1 on that. And, Margie, you just joined 2 months ago. And so when Lily was just talking about being your authentic self in the interview process, what's your approach on this and how did you prepare for the interview?
I definitely have to, do the Amazon plus one as well, particularly because I'm also a military veteran. So I can definitely, it resonated with me about the things that individuals may do that they think is the right thing that the person wants to hear. And I think what was so important for me was really kind of envisioning, the things that you spoke to. What is my brand? And what are my superpowers? And what are those things that I could bring to the table, and do so in the authentic way that makes me Marjorie? And so for me, that visualization process is extremely important. And I think sometimes, especially as women, and I know this is who, we're speaking to today, but I find a lot of us may have, some sort of imposter syndrome, or be a little bit more humble and not necessarily want to come across as, being braggadocious or being really arrogant. And I think it's important for us as women to find our voice and our way, and to identify those things that make us stand out. And so in terms of my prep, I definitely took time to go back and look at the things that I had done over, the course of my career, and then really kind of matching and created a matrix of those skill sets and how they plugged and played into the leadership principles that we talked about, which are critical in terms of communicating during the interview process, just as how you align to that. So really the other important part of this is also preparation. And so really practicing. I mean, I spent, like I said, a couple of days just thinking through, what previously from my experience matched up. And then I spent time communicating to other people to make sure that I was coming across, I think, in the best way that I in my best way that I thought would resonate with the folks that I was dealing with. And lastly, it was extremely difficult because I was interviewing during quarantine. And so really recognizing, like, how do I come across over camera, because for a lot of us, like, this is new, being, in this, manner of having to relate and create those personal connections with someone that's literally on the other side of the computer.
Yeah, definitely. Plus one, in regards to, preparing for an interview, at Amazon, we're going to go more in depth in regards to our 14 leadership principles. And when I was a candidate myself, how I prepared for an interview is that for each of the 14 leadership principles, I had 2 examples each. And I'm a visual learner, and so I had an Excel spreadsheet, and vertically I wrote down the STAR, the situation, the task, the action, the result, and then horizontally I had 3 to 5 sentences of the situation, of the task, of the action, of the result. This way I can see it in writing, making sure that I'm leading with data, that I'm showcasing the impact that I'm making in regards to my customer in an innovative way. And so in regards to preparation, there's different types of forms, but for me as a visual learner, I had it as an Excel spreadsheet, vertically the STAR, horizontally my sentences, my stories, my authentic stories that I wanted to showcase to the interviewer. Outside of preparation, let's dive a little bit more deep. I'm sorry, Margie, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. The only thing I was going to add also, visual folks, there are videos out there as well. So again, this seems maybe to some folks as like this nebulous concept, and what does that mean? But I definitely recommend just going online and looking at those videos.
Yeah, definitely. So outside of our interview preparation, the heart of Amazon, our DNA of what it means to be Amazonian, really focus on our 14 leadership principles. So let's talk about our LPs. These are critical part of the interview process. Lily, would you like to share anything in regards to our 14 leadership principles?
Yeah, I mean, we obviously interview against our leadership principles. I don't have anything more interesting than what Marjorie mentioned in terms of how she prepared for those. I certainly have the one that I have as my favorite, which is learn and be curious. And that's something that I think is really important when you're interviewing, and then when you're the interviewee, taking time to just really listen to what the interviewer is asking you, and just being curious about, what they do, and learning more about them as well.
Yeah, definitely. And we also talk more about mechanisms in regards to how to place and drive inclusion in the process. Can you talk more about our Bar Raiser program?
Oh, absolutely. Yep. I'm a bar raiser. I became a bar raiser, I think about 4 years ago. I was just so interested in the program, and I'm so happy that I joined. One of the first things, there's always like this, oh, are you the bar raiser? And sometimes I'll sit down to interviews and people go, I think you're my bar raiser, and they're really nervous. And I'm like, hey, my job is actually to make sure that you have a wonderful experience. And as the bar raiser, what I try to do is make sure that people can truly express themselves and tell me everything that they want to tell me about the different experiences that they've had. The bar raiser program actually, generally the bar raiser is somebody who isn't on the team that you're interviewing for. They're from a different team, and so they just bring a different perspective that's just an Amazon wide one. And the reason I think it is complementary to our diversity and inclusion efforts is we're really there to make sure that we're talking about our leadership principles, and that we're allowing candidates to truly talk about themselves, and that everyone's getting a fair interview. And of course, we have different initiatives within our Bar Raiser organization to bring more diversity into our Bar Raiser in training and our Bar Raiser program, so that when we have interviews and candidates come in, they can really see themselves represented on the interview team.
That's awesome. And then Marjorie, what is the most challenging leadership principle to focus on in your interview?
Ironically for me, given that I just came and was recently at a talent agency prior to Amazon, it was actually frugality. And I say that because if anyone is familiar with the agency space, it's a world, although they're clamping down, where, there's champagne for a birthday, or, there's expense accounts and that sort of thing. So really just having me connect the dots between frugality and Amazon was something particularly that I had to think about, because we think of Amazon as this big, $1 trillion, company, but they haven't gotten there without being fiscally responsible. So again, to me, there was intentionality behind including that as a leadership principle. And I think, in regard to my prior experiences, I think, again, frugality was the hardest one just because of where I came from.
Yeah, definitely. And let's go back to being authentic. And so, how do you get comfortable of being uncomfortable as a candidate? Anybody would like to share some overall tips?
Well, I haven't been a candidate in a really long time, but I can certainly talk about my own just kind of journey to authenticity. And then I think Marjorie might be able to talk more about the candidate side. But I think there was just a time, where I just decided I would stop that negative internal talk track, of myself. Like it didn't go, perhaps I didn't study the right thing, I didn't come from the right company, I didn't have the right experience, whatever I came from the wrong place, like whatever it was that used to just run in my head. I just decided one day, you know what, like I'm going to bring my whole self, and everyone's going to take it or leave it. But I have got to start with me feeling good about who it is that's showing up every day. And it was after my moment was after I had kids. I was just too tired. I was too tired to code switch every day and to be worried about it. And so it's the moment I decided, like, I'm going to be me. I'm going to be comfortable with myself. I'm going to start with liking me first. And to be honest, the moment I decided I was okay is really when my own career began to take off. And I think a lot of it has to do with people just started feeling more comfortable around me because I started feeling more comfortable around myself. And that was it for me.
Definitely. Margie, would you like to add any thoughts?
Absolutely. I mean, I don't have kids, so it's exciting to hear that if that ever happens, that'll be another layer of getting to that, next level of being comfortable. But I think really kind of to underscore what you said, I mean, I agree. Like it really boils down to you like loving yourself, and really for a lot of us, again, reframing all of those doubts that come in and out of our mind, and those things that we've heard that may have been negative experiences in our past, and really just recognizing that there's beauty in being uncomfortable, because once you have enough practice at it, at a certain point you realize I'm still here, and the sky hasn't fallen, and, things go on. Tomorrow's here. And so I really believe once you get to that point, and it's really about, again, your mental reframing of your experiences, you realize that you do contribute those things that are uniquely specific to you to the group. And that's what's so important, because if we were all the same, then we'd be lacking the diversity that helps, especially in terms of innovation. We'd be doing the same thing, and it would limit our ability to innovate. So it's really, truly important for you to identify who you are and what makes you uniquely you, and then be comfortable bringing that unique self to the table.
Yeah, definitely. And Amazon definitely encourages that through our 14 leadership principles, but how you can be your full authentic self. There's so many different avenues within Amazon that encourages each individual or each Amazonian to showcase this. So going back to Marjorie again, you've been here less than 2 months. If you had to look back, what surprised you the most? And what advice would you probably have given yourself as a candidate now?
I think the first thing for sure was, realizing, like, especially because I joined the Prime Studio side, so really on the entertainment side, but this is still a tech company. And so there are things that come with that, such as, an inherent, like a huge number of meetings, and really having to manage which ones are important for me to actually participate in and which ones I can contribute to, but I don't necessarily need to sit through. And then also, I think an afterthought was just the number of trainings and that sort of stuff that are associated with being, again, at a tech company. So there are certain things that it would not have crossed my mind that was important from the entertainment side, but it really made sense when I realized that, oh, you know what, you're actually joining the tech company. And then in terms of, I think, the advice, what was really important and really good advice that I got, and I think it's really critical for folks that are interviewing at some of the more senior roles, is when you're putting together that spreadsheet chart, whatever the matrix that, you spoke about, Chris, in terms of preparing for this interview, it's really important when you're thinking about those experiences that you're thinking about some of the higher level experiences or experiences that speak to whatever level you're applying for. So it's understandable if you're fresh out of college, maybe you don't have, this huge, toolkit to pull from. But if you're mid-level or even a more senior level candidate, those experiences that you're discussing should definitely be reflective of the role that you're interviewing for within the company.
I think that was really insightful. And I love the thought about leveling that you talked about. Actually, when we're interviewing, we look at leveling a lot. One thing actually I'd forgotten to mention before as well, which is just something I tell people when they're interviewing, is don't forget when you come to the interview that everybody there wants you to get the job. Like, spending an hour with you, like, they're there to confirm that the recruiter and whoever you talk to on the phone, which is usually the hiring manager, was right in bringing you in to interview. And I often feel like candidates forget that. Like, it's not a trick. We want you to get this interview, especially the talent acquisition people. We want you to succeed, and we want you to be really successful. So that's one thing I also tell people. But Marjorie, I completely agree with, everything that you've said, but that framing. And I think you go in with your headset, your frame of mind, and that's an important part too, is everybody here wants me to win. So let's win together and do a really great job on this interview.
Agreed. It goes back to our mission. We strive to be the Earth's most customer-centric company. And when we look at our talent acquisition leaders, our recruiters, our customers are our candidates. So we are obsessed when it comes to our candidates. we are going to spend time and provide resources to make sure that our candidates are well calibrated, that they can be their full authentic self while going through the various stages of the Amazon interview process. I wanted to say thank you to Lily as well as Marjorie for providing their insights as well as tips in regards to how to be a bar-raising candidate as you navigate Amazon.jobs and looking at all of our various roles and opportunities that we have to offer. Wanted to utilize this particular session today to really making sure that this was an eye-opener for everyone, that you can be your full authentic self. And representation truly matters, that you can look at your resume and really tell that authentic story by taking that data-driven approach, by asking those open-ended questions, right? About what is your superpower? What are your visions? What is your end goal? And how you can take those particular open-ended questions and then reflect on it and utilize it to navigate your journey at Amazon. Thank you for your time today.